Welcome back to hour number 2 of the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Do want to remind you, by the way, and I've been announcing this throughout the morning, because it starts at 11 today, goes to 4. The Cumulus Job Fair is going on at Park City Center in Lancaster today. Runs from 11 to 4. Features a wide variety of jobs that are really available right now. And I know a lot of people are still looking around for jobs. And so the key, dress appropriately, bring your resume to Park City Center between 11 and 4 today. And for more information, go to newsradio910.com. Also would like to remind you that Joe Oster, also known as Porky, is out at the fair. He's underneath the grandstand, and if you enter from the back of the grandstand, that would be on the left side, the main entrance where you go in to see the shows, where you go left when you go into the grandstand. And he's giving $1 off each sandwich today to the Red Cross. Yeah, I'm going to be out there with him today from 2 until like 6 o'clock, and hope you'll stop by and see me. I'm going to be helping to serve today. Joe, he said if I'm really good, he'll let me do that. So Porky is giving $1 off each sandwich to the Red Cross, and then at the end of the day, once he gets the total, he'll match that total himself. So come on out and help the Red Cross at the same time, and we look forward to seeing you out there as well. This next gentleman, I'm not quite sure how you totally introduce him, but he is called a master of environmental entrepreneurism. He has over 20 years of experience in developing and implementing programs that kind of bring the interests of major corporations and their stakeholders together. He's developed profitable business strategies, helped to drive pollution down, profits up. He's been president and CEO of the Fortune 500 companies, helps some of the largest companies in the world, like Coca-Cola, General Motors, Nike, Mitsubishi, Weyerhaeuser. But he also is a guy who is out there thinking and trying to bring sides together. And one of the things that he asked a question about is the thing the president's going to be talking about tonight at 9 o'clock, which is ISIS. And he poses the question, could the Islamic State of ISIS defeat the United States? And one of the questions he has is, yeah, they might be able to if left and right continue to put politics ahead of nation. We welcome this morning to our show Mr. Bill Shireman. Bill, great to have you on the show this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you, Gary. Glad to be here.
Bill, I was obviously when you see could the Islamic State defeat ISIS or defeat the U.S., I mean, your ears perk up and your eyes bulge out and you read the article. I was entranced by the article, frankly. And, we look today at a country, and a lot of us right now, we're trying to form a little group here. When you come in to debate policy, when you come in to debate the right things to do, that you somehow lay down your filters at the door, your filter of Republican and Democrat that kind of gives you permission to think before you really think, and think in a very narrow way. We want people to think in a very open way about these kinds of very important issues that are affecting not only their regions but the world today. And it seems like too many people right now feel more like they have to cling to a side than solve a problem. I'm going to start with that point and let you take it from there.
Absolutely, that is the case, Gary. And I think when we look at fundamentalist groups like Islamic State, we have to realize that the objective of fundamentalism is to divide the enemy. Fundamentalists are basically folks with small, relatively powerless groups who are trying to take down big and much more powerful groups. And they play us, and we play into their hands when they take a fundamentalist cause to us, and then we respond with a fundamentalist response. And that is precisely what we've done for a generation in response to terrorist activities. The two parties have divided. They battle one another. They adopt fundamentalist tracts. We believe exactly this way. You believe exactly the opposite way. You are the enemy. We have to destroy you. Maybe we're destroying you politically here in the States, but psychologically it's the same thing. And this is precisely what our opponents want us to do. And we have an odd system that reinforces that behavior.
Yeah, it's interesting that, we are basically hypocritical because the very thing that we say about those people overseas are the very things that we're doing at home that really don't compare well when you put them side by side.
No, they don't. And of course, we're not carrying out violent activities
right.
the same way that they are. Although some would say that we are in some cases. But what we have done is we've allowed a subculture of political and media consultants. And these are not the enemies, by the way, because we all are a part of this system. It's simply the way, frankly, the marketplace works. You have political consultants who work for a wide variety of vested interests from the left to the right, and their objective basically is to stop change, to stop legislation from passing, to stop regulations from happening, to stop anything from changing in government, because they represent various groups that already have power. And then they contribute to the campaign consultants, and their objectives are to win elections, and they need to divide people and create wedge issues and create solid blocks of voters that believe fundamentally. And then they work with media consultants, and they, need to create programs on TV, radio, and on the web that also have wedge audiences, that people who are being impulsive, who are following their impulses rather than using their heads. And all of this conspires together, and there are literally tens of thousands of people doing this. None of them take responsibility for it because they're all a tiny part of the system. But what it leads to is a fundamentalist political system in which we are very vulnerable to groups like Islamic State, who have the skills to take us down.
I call this, what you're describing, sidism, for lack of a better term. It probably falls short of what we really want. But the idea that I must have before I'm allowed to think, I must have a side. And then once I have gone through that filter and I know what my side believes, I can now come in, and if the other side is making the point, then I know I don't have to listen because I'm not going to change anything because that's not on my side. Right. And so when I watch TV or I listen, as I'm preparing for my show every day, and I really want people to think, and yet I'm sure I am as guilty sometimes of some of the things that you were talking about as anybody, but we try to come from an honest point of view, and yet we all get caught in it. I want people to say, lay down the side. Look at this situation. Let's both look at this situation. It can't be that different for both of us as we look at it. And let's talk about what we need to do here, what is right and what is wrong. And I'm sure as people are looking at this thing tonight, when the president speaks, people are going to say, I don't like President Obama, therefore anything he says tonight is going to be absolutely off the charts.
Exactly.
And the people that say, well, I like President Obama, anything he says tonight is going to be absolutely right. And then there's this whole bunch of people sitting out in the country right now, and I think they're growing, and you see the same ones I do, and they're saying, I don't feel real good about anything right now. I'm really not sure about anything because no one seems to be wanting to attack and find the truth.
No, it's true. They're more focused. They really don't take threats like Islamic State seriously because they're willing to say, well, I will take actions that strengthen these fundamentalists that are against us because I want to win an election next time around. Yeah. And that is absolutely underestimating our enemy, because our enemy is not just a single organization, Islamic State. If we go out there and destroy every member of the Islamic State, there'll be another set that will pop up probably 3 times as large, because if we take a purely military response, which of course we need a military response, but if we take a purely military response, we're going to create victims. And those victims have families and communities. And those families and communities will become the next wave of the Islamic State. And so, yes, of course we have to respond militarily, but we have to respond with a message. And that message is that we are united, that we can work together, that the left and the right each represent core values that are important to America, that it's not either or, it's both and that, you can't achieve the objectives of either without both, and that we stand together against fundamentalism here and abroad.
Let's see, united we stand, divided we fall. I think I've heard that somewhere along the line.
I think I have. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this question. We have people out there right now who continue to play with fire, the very thing you mentioned a moment ago, where they say, you know what, it's more important for me to have my election and win my election than it is for me to really do policy. When it seemed to me that our founding fathers kind of set up a republic where we said, it's good that we come in with our opinions, and it's good that maybe these opinions are different because they're going to flesh out a lot of some of the things that maybe we haven't thought about from the various vantage points we view it. And yet, at the end of the day, the idea, I think, of our founding fathers, too, was after you've debated, what is the very best thing for the country that we can fashion out of this? I don't mean to sound too simple on that, but isn't that what the premise was?
Absolutely. And, we like to talk about power and purpose, that the nation should stand for a purpose and should use its power to advance that purpose. And so should individuals, so should candidates. When a candidate is running for office, it's not to get elected, it's to advance a purpose. And many times you can advance that purpose by standing for principles, whether or not you are actually elected. Well, how many politicians actually follow that approach? People put power first. And when they put personal power first, they end up sacrificing the interests of the communities and really undermining their own lives. It's a waste of time for a man or a woman to spend his or her life just accumulating power, winning elections, if they're not able to actually do something with that advances a purpose. And that's what the nation has tended to lose. We follow politics mechanistically. I have to win the next election or I won't be able to win the next election. And then what'll happen? Well, you live your life. You do something that's good, something of value. People have to demand that of the system. It's not the right, it's not the left, no existing institution, it's the people.
And it will not change unless the people decide they want to change it, because those who are being put in power will abuse that and continue to abuse that as a status quo. There will be no reason for them to want to change it otherwise. And that takes me to this point, Bill. When we look at this, it seems to me that we have become a nation where we have accepted the way things are done, for example, in Washington, D.C., and even on our state levels, which says this is how we're going to do it, as opposed to them being an extension of us, which I, again, believe was part of what a republic or a representative democracy was supposed to be. And we somehow, as the people, have bought into that.
Oh, yeah, we really have. It's funny. We look at the government as if it's an external institution. We look at
call them they, yeah.
It's them over there. They have to do this for us. Well, that's not true, and we think that we're getting more power if we demand more from them. But really, it's expecting more of them, and that's what we need to do.
The other thing too that and you write this in your article, and again, we're talking this morning with Bill Shireman, who's written about ISIS could defeat the United States if we don't get rid of this idea of right and left and conservative and liberal and Democrat, Republican. But one of the things you say in the article is that conservatives blame big government and unions, liberals blame big corporations and banks, politicians blame voters blame politicians, everyone blames lawyers. None of them cause the problem by themselves, so none of them take responsibility for their collective result, a weak and divided America. When you look at this, our conversation, which I think should be a heck of a lot deeper in this country, like how do we solve problems, becomes so elementary-ish. And we watch these people come on at night, and even like Fox, they'll bring people on, they say, this is fair and balanced. And so you bring on Democratic strategists, Republican strategists. And you could tell the lines before they ever even say them. I'm watching one right now on CNN, same thing. Bring out one person, bring out the other person, and they treat us like idiots, and yet why do we buy this crap? I mean, why do we buy it?
It works. We're all part-time idiots. And it's easy to spin us. And we live in a digital world now where we're barraged by messages all the time, and very few opportunities to actually sit and think in a calm sort of way. And without consciously desiring it, both the political system and the media system have learned to live on this. The media. If you want to attract people cheaply, you trigger their impulses. So you figure out, okay, how do conservatives think impulsively? How do progressives think impulsively? Well, they have certain belief systems. Nature is good or nature is threatening. People are good or people are evil. Let's play on that. And so that's what they do. And you got thousands of people doing this on thousands of issues and selling thousands of products all the time by triggering our impulses. So we have to stop and actually have a moment to think. And frankly, that's not the way to attract the biggest audience or the most voters. It costs a little more. It takes a little more time.
So don't let thinking become an impulse buy. Make it something a lot more than that, right? It's not the one you find at the front counter with the inquiring minds want to know. When we come back, Bill, I want to take the president's speech tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, what he needs to say tonight in the spirit that you're talking about here this morning, and how we need to approach it tonight, maybe as listeners who are trying to get beyond just the sideism that we're talking about. Bill Shireman back right after this on the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show with Bill Shireman, President and CEO of Future 500, and also author of the article, Could the Islamic State ISIS. Defeat the U.S.? Yes, he says, if the right and left continue to put politics ahead of the nation. And Bill's back with us here on the Gary Sutton Show. I was struck by a line in your article, Bill, and it said, to the rest of the world, the U.S. looks like a divided nation of unpredictable fundamentalists. You talked about that in the beginning. On the right and left, it offers aspiring people nothing they can count on. It abandons its historical role as a beacon of hope. That leaves a vacuum that extremist groups like ISIS fill. I thought that was really an insightful comment.
Well, thank you. I think that's what we have failed to do. You know, we look at ourselves and we fail to see the fundamentalism that has infected our politics as well. We expect that others will simply continue to see the United States as a beacon, and I believe the United States is a beacon. That we have an extraordinary history that we are all fortunate to have inherited. We didn't create it ourselves, after all. We're here having inherited it, and so has the rest of the world. And I want the rest of the world to look to that as an example. And I don't see us providing the example that provides inspiration to people that are trying to better their lives.
I think there are many of us out here who are uncomfortable right now, who are looking for a way to do this better. You obviously being one of the people in that area. And we're looking to say, okay, how do we talk about, for example, our president? How do we approach just to the starting point? He's got a speech tonight coming up at 9 o'clock. We've all heard a lot of speeches. We've seen speeches that run absolutely in the opposite direction of what the actions have been. And so there are people who say, geez, I'm not really talking about a side here, Bill, but when someone cries wolf often enough and it doesn't seem to work out, do I continue to listen to it? How do I do this with an open mind and yet at the same time not be too naive when I've seen a certain level of incompetency, not only here, but also in other administrations too, but this is what we're facing right now. So how do I approach this tonight with those concerns in mind?
Yeah, I think we have to be bigger than our politicians, and frankly, that's not that. It's
tough.
A challenge for us.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't had great leaders in the last decade or two, and I think the question is not so much what President Obama should do as what we should do.
Yeah.
We need to stand behind him, not because he is Barack Obama, but because he is the President of the United States, and we need to be together behind him. We also need to hold him accountable. If he uses the speech tonight to score political points that are intended to influence the Senate elections and the House elections, and we need to hold him accountable to that. But we need to do that primarily privately, and our first message needs to be, we are together as a nation. This is what we stand for. This is who we are, and this is what we hold our politicians accountable for. Now, if he's magnanimous and if he calls for unity, then the right has to respond in that same way and has to reflect that back. That's political responsibility. I do not expect them to do that because there are too many campaign consultants, a lot of them have contracts on the major media, to come on and spin things, and their sole objective is to win specific elections. That's what they're there for. They don't mention that, but they're out there campaigning for specific politicians, and they're spinning issues so that they'll affect people in those specific districts.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me after these speeches are given and you have the spin rooms, especially when you see debates when presidential elections are coming up. You suggest, though, and this is not, you're not being wishy-washy in this, you do suggest that there are 3 points that you think would be good in order to defeat ISIS. We have about a minute to go here. And I wanted you to hit those 3 points that maybe we can listen for tonight and hope that they happen. I know you've already mentioned a few things that you'd like to hear, but what are the 3 points that you think are needed for the United States to defeat ISIS?
Well, I think we need to defeat them militarily, of course.
Yes.
We need to be out there with the military. We also need to defeat them in terms of messaging, and that means an authentic message of what America stands for. But third and finally, we need to defeat them with our own unity, with our willingness to stand together as a nation, right and left, each respecting one another, each willing to debate one another, but ready to advance our collective best interests.
Bill, it's been fascinating talking to you this morning, I must tell you, and I hope that we can tap on your expertise again sometime soon and continue this conversation.
Great. I will do it. Okay.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bill Shireman with us here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show. And again, if you want to read the article, in fact, I'll tell you what, I'll put it up on Twitter also and retweet it. But it's called Could Islamic State Defeat the U.S.? And it's at the HuffingtonPost.com. You can go /Bill Shireman and then /Could Islamic State Defeat? And you'll find it. Or you can just Google it. Could Islamic State defeat the U.S.? Bill Shireman is the author.